How's it going, you guys? It's Scott with Everyday Home Repairs. Now today I'm going to be installing a smart sub panel specifically called the Smart Panel 2 from EcoFlow. I really haven't seen many panels like this in the past, and it has some really cool features. Specifically, I think this might be one of the best ways to get into solar and start offsetting your monthly power bills without spending $20, $30, $40, or $50,000, especially because we're going to be bringing solar in and also have battery capacity storage that we could use at night during a power outage. There's some really neat things, and I'm going to have my buddy Joel Walsman from Jefferson Electric out of Indianapolis, Indiana, walking us through how to install this, because although you know I love DIY, I do most things by myself DIY. On this install, most of us would turn to a trusted partner in our area. So let's jump through it. We'll go through the install quickly. Joel will be tying this into a 200 amp Square D QO main panel, and then I'll show you all the cool features at the end and really why I'm installing this at the house, which I'm really excited to get up and running. Now, kicking things off, you'd want to know what circuits you want to bring over to the sub panel. These would probably be your critical circuits that you'd want to power in pretty much any scenario. You can see a bunch of white spaghetti wires going everywhere in my main Square D QO panel. That is an Emporia energy monitoring system, and it basically indicates the circuits that I want to bring over. So once you know that, you can start to get the plan on where do we want to locate the sub panel, which Joel's putting in here and connecting with an 1.25" PVC at the bottom. That will be bringing in our main conductors to feed 100 amps from the main panel to this Smart Panel 2. And then he's just starting to relocate those. He's bringing the Romex out for the 4 120 volt circuits and then the 2 240 volt circuits. So this is not a critical loads panel where you pass the wires to the critical loads panel and you pass them back. This one, we're actually just going to be landing these circuits, 4 120s and 2 240s, over in the Smart Panel 2. To do this, you can see the two metal junction boxes. Those are 4x4s and 4 11/16 deep, so they have some capacity in there. And Joel's putting in the cable clamps and then starting to land those circuits that we just pulled out of the main panel, landing those in one of the two different junction boxes. Then once he has those all landed, he'll start to cut out our holes that we'll install clamps in at the top. Because this is a weather sealed sub panel, you have to cut the holes in it. So there are no knockouts in the top of this. So we'll cut 6 holes in the top and then put 6 corresponding cable clamps, one for each of the circuits. Nice thing is this also gives me some additional capability later on if I want to bring in 1, 2, 3, 4 more circuits to fill out this entire smart sub panel. I will have that because I can double up on each of these cable clamps. So now you'll start to see Joel really landing those wires into the sub panel and then bringing those back up to the junction box where we'll tie those into the existing wires that were already in place. This is going to be the majority of your work, and you actually want a plan of attack. It's nice. Obviously, you see we're going from kind of a spaghetti mess on the main panel, and Joel's actually taking his time and really doing a professional job routing the different circuits within the panel. And he'll also be doing a great job routing it within the panel, just keeping everything clean, which is by far the way you'd want to go. Now for breakers, the breakers here, you have flexibility. You can use pretty much any of the top brands. You cannot use Square D QO. I will be using Square D Homeline. This is a big advantage. I think this is a huge advantage of this system where you're not using like an EcoFlow proprietary component. You have flexibility to buy off the shelf. Now, once you have your breakers, you can start to cut your wires to length, your neutrals and grounds, landing those. We're going to drill out here, and this is going to be the generator inlet. So you'll see that gray flexible tube goes to this 30 amp generator inlet from the outside, and then that will just be the liquid tight tube that will bring it through the top of that smart panel. Remember, this can be both fed from 100 amps from grid, so it's going to be a 100 amp sub panel, but it also can be fed from a generator. That generator can provide power to your home, or it can charge your batteries if the batteries are providing the power. So it is a super flexible system and extremely handy to have, especially in a power out scenario. Last up, we'll go ahead and land those largest of conductors, and that's going to bring in the final circuit, and that circuit is the 100 amps coming from the main panel feeding over to the sub panel. So Joel's basically complete on the installation. You saw all those different components. Really, it's about as simple as a sub panel that you would install without the brains of the Smart Panel 2 from EcoFlow. Now, one of the key benefits is really integrating this into the Delta Pro Ultra unit and the Delta Pro Ultra unit's capability to bring up to 5.6 kilowatts worth of solar power. Now, I don't have that much installed, but I do have 6 panels already installed. Let me show you that installation just so you can compare it if you're considering something at your house as well. So the setup on this property, I have 6 360 watt helium panels mounted on this detached garage roof. This detached garage is actually off grid. I'm powering that with 2 Delta Pros and the dual voltage hub and just doing a bunch of different projects on everyday solar. Now I do have 1.5 inch PVC conduit sunk 24 inches in the ground and running over to this side of the property where it goes into the house. So I have the 1.5 inch coming out to an LB where I could pull the solar wires through and then going into the basement. That location is right at the Smart Panel 2. And then I bring those PV wires down into MC4 connectors, and that goes into the high voltage side of the Delta Pro Ultra. And as we talked about, from EcoFlow's perspective, this should really be left up to the professionals. Now, it's up to you, obviously, where you live and your skill level if you want to take this on as a DIY project. Honestly, again, it's about the level of a sub panel. Some people would tell you that is completely in the pro camp, and others are comfortable doing that DIY. So I'll leave that decision up to you, but I do want to get Joel's feedback. A number of you are going to need to get this installed. So I want to get his feedback on how long he thinks this would take so you can base pricing that you get from your local service provider to what Joel just experienced installing the Smart Panel 2. So you guys saw Joel jumping around and installing a bunch of wires. This is Joel from both Jefferson Electric out of Indianapolis, Indiana, and Electric Pro Academy. I'm sure you guys probably saw his YouTube channel before. Joel's been on Everyday Home Repairs about 4 times in the past and has done some great work. So what did you think overall? You're just finishing up the install. About how long does it take? What would somebody expect so they can base some like pricing off of it?
I'm incredibly happy at how straightforward this is. I spent about 10 minutes looking over the instruction manual for the first time. This is my first run with the panel.
Right.
Like you said, just like a standard sub panel. 3 tools to install, plug and play. That's kind of EcoFlow for you. It's a no-brainer, DIY friendly solution.
Yeah.
If you're just
big advantage with the breakers, right? So now you're not dealing with like proprietary relays on the Smart Panel 1. Now you can go down to Home Depot, Lowe's, maybe you have a Menards in your area and get the circuits that you need for this. So that, to me, that's a huge advantage.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Just to install the panel, you're probably looking at about 3 labor hours to relocate your circuits, maybe 4 or 5 if you're filling up all 16 spaces. You might run into a little extra time required if you're flush mounting the panel, which is capable of with a 14.5 inch standard width, which would fit in any 16 on center stud bay. That's a great design feature. If you have got to relocate the battery box, maybe an hour or 2.
Generator inlet, depending on what you're doing with solar. So we just have some PV wires coming in here. Depending on what that's set up, that can be different for everyone, obviously. So yeah, so full days work, 1 man?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep, full day, 1 man, start to finish, all your sources of power. It's pretty great.
So all in, really, we don't know quite yet. I'd say from a hardware perspective with Smart Panel 2 and the EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra, you're probably in the $10,000 to $11,000 range. And then what do you think on labor? That obviously varies around the country, but stack on another $2,000, $3,000 on top of that?
Yeah, typically electricians are going to want to make anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per day with all the incidental materials that they may be providing. you know, the bits and pieces.
Yeah. So she looks pretty on the wall, but we haven't really done anything yet. So let's go ahead and connect up the Delta Pro Ultra. So we have battery capability, and we landed some 240 circuits here. One is the condenser unit outside for a Mr. Cool unit, a duct unit I installed not too long ago. And then one's the 15 amp unit for the air handler inside. So we can load this up right now and see how much we can actually put through that battery. And then we'll show you some of the features. It might not be clear quite yet, but you have quite a few different things you can do here. You've got grid tied, 100 amp grid tied. You have a generator inlet with an interlock. Am I feeding from the generator side, or am I feeding from my main panel and grid power? And then obviously the battery part of it. Do I want to supply power to those circuits from the battery, or do I want it from the grid, or do I want it from the generator? So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of flexibility. I say we get everything hooked up and powered up.
That sounds great.
So now we have everything plugged up, and I'm actually running the HVAC system off the EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra down here. The way you connect it up is a proprietary cable from EcoFlow that goes directly from the output of this top section, which is the smarts, the inverter, and all your inputs and outputs, that will connect up to one of the 3 inputs of the Smart Panel 2. Expandability on the system is impressive. So I have one battery underneath the top section. That battery has 6 kilowatt hours. You can stack a total of 5 batteries under each one of these. Just know this thing's pretty darn heavy. You're talking about 80 pounds for the top section and 116 pounds for each of these bottom battery sections. So if 30 kilowatt hours isn't enough for you, you could expand it. Don't forget, you have 2 more ports. So technically, this unit here, the Smart Panel 2, can bring in a total of 90 kilowatt hours of capability if you wanted to expand out all the way to the extent of the system. Now, it just got dark out, so my solar is basically at 0, but I am producing about 1,700 watts, and I'm providing the power to the HVAC system currently. For this system, I really want to exercise it. Now, at this rate, this system would only last about 3 hours of battery power. Now, I can charge it right from the grid if I wanted to. So you have a bunch of capabilities with this system to adjust it. Maybe you want to feed the power from battery during a time of day where you're getting charged higher rates for electricity. You have that capability here, and it's really all just configured throughout your phone. So on the app, we can see what are we bringing from the grid, which is 0. What are we feeding from our battery? That's at 87%, and that is 1.66 kilowatts, and basically then providing that all to the home that's shown on the right-hand side. And then below, you'll get some different charts over time to see historically what have we been doing in terms of the whole home's consumption, what came from the grid, what came from the battery, and then even the generator if we're using the generator. You can flip over to the circuits page, and that's really going to give you your breakdown of how we configured this. So during the setup and during the commissioning of your Smart Panel 2, you'll combine 120 circuits if you have a 240 circuit in there, like my Mr. Cool air handler or my Mr. Cool condenser, and then that gives you your configuration, and that's how you monitor the system in terms of each of the circuits. What are we putting out currently for power? And then you can also look across historically as well. Now, there are a ton of more features on the actual EcoFlow app, and I won't dive into all those today. That will be a separate video where we'll show all the different features, but just know you can configure different tasks, different times of day. Does it repeat weekly? Does it repeat daily? Do I want it coming from battery? Do I want it coming from the grid? There's a lot of configuration there that you can do so we can adjust it to each of our applications. Now, if you want to know a lot more about the Ultra unit itself, I did a deep dive over on Everyday Solar, my other YouTube channel. So check out this video right here and you'll see all the specifications and some of the use cases for the Ultra. It is a really cool unit. If you need more details on the Smart Panel 2 installation, Joel has that video over on his channel, Electric Pro Academy, and you can check that one out right here. So thanks for joining me on this video, and we'll catch you on one of those 2 videos. Take care.